Just a second. Actually, I'm having some net issue. I'll just join from another device so I can use data. Just 2 minutes.
Before you leave, make sure to make me the host. Otherwise, the
Yeah,
session
just one
will.
second.
Yeah, it's fine.
I've just made you the host.
Right.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible and visible now.
Yeah, it's better now. Yeah.
Yes. Great. Um, if you can make me the host, I'll just start sharing.
Done.
Great. I hope this is visible, everyone.
Yeah, visible.
Great. So what I'm going to be doing is
However,
that
you would have to scroll down it continuously
yeah.
because only a part of it is visible.
Yeah, I'll scroll down.
Yeah, cool. Oh,
Great. So what we're going to do today is that we have a few passages. We're going to be doing the CR section. I'll first introduce myself. As Anish has already said, I'm Navya. I'm a first year BLB student in NLS currently, and I got the AIR 6 in CLAT. Similarly, why I chose the CR section specifically was that I was someone who was very bad at CR. I have got even 7 to 8 marks out of 30 in this section, which you can understand is abysmal. But in the final CLAT paper, I got 28 out of 30. So I definitely know how to improve the marks, and I can definitely help you with that. So what we're going to be doing in this session today is basically going over the passages. They have been created by NLTI. They're part of the mocks. We're going to be reading them for about 4 minutes, and then you guys are going to be solving them for the next 2 minutes. So you have 6 minutes per passage. Please do write down your solutions, like whichever answer you think is right, just note that down for your own convenience. And then I'll be discussing this as well. I hope that's fine with everyone. And as we go on, I'll also be giving you some tips that I have learned from which helped me, which I have learned, which my teachers had taught me, or which my mentors had taught me. So we'll be going on like that. So I hope you guys do enjoy this session. So should we start? Great. So I'll just put a timer for 4 minutes and let's start reading this passage. You guys should be done with the passage by now, and you should be starting on the questions. Great. So our 6 minutes are up. I hope that everyone has finished the questions as well as the reading by think are your answers. And I hope you've sorted now. So this was definitely, according to me, an easy passage. Most of the reading was something that could have been done by all of us. So for the first question, we see it asks, what does the success of Baidu's Ernie bot suggest about China's potential role in emerging technologies? So here we see that this is almost directly said in the passage. This is one of the paragraphs of the passage here. About the Ernie bot. These two passages in the middle are about this. So we'll have to focus on these passages when answering the question. So the option A says that China's ability to lead emerging technologies is limited to natural language and processing only. Now, if you see the end of this passage, it says that this marks an improvement in creative writing, question answers, reasoning, and code generation. So it is obvious that option A is incorrect. Similarly, option B, the success of Ernie bot signifies that China can only achieve relative success in emerging technologies by copying US models. So I think that some people may be confused about this because in the paragraph we can see that it says China can significantly influence emerging technologies and impact society by closely trailing the US. Now, closely trailing does not mean that they are copying the US. So similarly, this one is also incorrect. Going to option C, Ernie-bot suggests signifies that China has the potential to influence emerging technologies significantly. Now, see, according to me, this is the correct answer. However, we cannot settle on a correct answer until we've read all the options in a passage. Now, it's very easy that one might think that this is the best answer and select that, but we haven't read option D as of now. So option D says that the success of Ernie-bot is an anomaly and doesn't reflect China's overall potential in emerging technologies. So if we look at these two passages, nowhere has the word anomaly ever been said. So it's not possible that this option would be correct. So just by looking at certain words, like what I've focused on here is in this option A is the natural language. Secondly, in option B, I said by copying US models. And in option D, we talked about anomaly. So by looking at these certain words, we are able to eliminate eliminate the wrong options and find what the correct option will be. So we can use this is one trick that I found very helpful. Second question. So 86 question says, which of the following can be inferred about the AI related research publications according to the passage? So option A, only US universities consistently publish AI related research. Let's go to the passage which talks about this. It is the fourth passage right here. Chinese institutions, the one talking about the institutions. So what we find is that the option A is telling us the exact opposite of what's written in the passage. Because when we talk of consistency, the passage has only mentioned Chinese universities. And when it talks about your US universities, it mentions only two and doesn't talk about consistency at all. So we cannot say that this is the correct option. The option B tells us that Chinese institutions regularly publish top-tier AI-related research, outperforming most US universities. So the thing is that this is stated mostly in the passage. We can get it from our reading. It says that they are consistently in the top 10 list, whereas US universities, one or two only have achieved this feat, and also in some domains, whereas China has done it in all domains. So this looks like a relatively correct answer, and there seems to be nothing incorrect with it. Still, we have to read option C and option D. Option C says that all of the top 10 AI related research publications are by Chinese institutions. Now, this was also not mentioned anywhere since it says also that one or two US universities have achieved this feat. So we can assume that this is incorrect. Similarly, option D, there is no significant publication from any other country apart from China and US. So this is completely out of the passage. And when something is not mentioned in the passage at all, we can assume that it is completely incorrect and it is just there to distract us. Because the only two countries which have been talked about are China and US. So we can assume from here that this is incorrect. Now, the third question of this passage, the statement that the US leadership in AI isn't completely secure would be strengthened by the information that. So this almost covers the entire passage. A, China has a large number of AI researchers. So even though this is not mentioned anywhere in the passage, we cannot completely disregard this. Why? Because this is like a strengthening question. So since this is a strengthening question, we have to use a little bit of our own sense also. It may not necessarily come directly from the passage. Now, however, when we talk about large number of AI researchers, this does not go to the quality of the researchers. So US leadership may have lesser number of researchers, but really good researchers. So this does not necessarily strengthen the argument. Then AI research in US is declining. Now, this was not mentioned anywhere in the passage. So we cannot really say that AI research has been weakening. Similarly, the option C, Chinese universities are producing more cutting edge AI. Now, this is the whole gist of the passage. We can look at any of the paragraphs in this passage, like already the ones I talked about institutions, about Ernie-bot. All of these are relating to the same thing, that China is almost ahead of the US. So this could definitely be one of the options which is correct. AI is not prominently featured in US strategic plan. Now, this is also completely out of the passage. So we really can't use it. Now, even though I had said that strengthening, sometimes you can use out of the passage, we see that one option is completely in the passage, is strengthening. So of course, it has to be the right answer. So we can eliminate all the answers on the basis that they are not in the passage and they are not, either they are moderately strengthening or they are not strengthening at all. Let's move to the last question. Which of the following underlies the author's argument in the passage? So this again is, it's almost like a premise question. It's asking which is one of the premises of the passage. Now, it says, option A, China has surpassed US in every domain of AI. So of course, it does not say that. When we read the passage, it doesn't say that at all. It says, writing of China in the AI race would surely amount to folly. So basically saying that we cannot say that China is not in the AI race, but it never says that China is ahead of US. Option B says that Chinese AI models are superior to that of the US. Similarly, this has not been said. We have seen the comparison between Ernie Bot and ChatGPT, which is just one of the two. And China's limitation in certain aspects of AI can be overcome with time and the passage for sure. We can see it throughout the passage if we try. Like we have talked about Ernie Bot. It says the quality of data available to domestic companies and censorship imposed by the government does have some effect, does limit the opportunities of Ernie Bot, but we cannot assume that US has wholly beaten China. So this is pointing to the correctness of option C. And last option, the passage does not make deterministic predictions. So US is destined to lose the AI race to China. We cannot say this at all. It has just said that there is, we cannot write off China from the AI race. So again, option D is incorrect. After looking at all the options, we find that option C would be most correct. Now, how did we solve these questions? Like how I would personally solve them is first, you realize have 120 questions in 120 minutes. You have enough time to dedicate to reading, which means you should understand what is written in the passage and comprehend it well at first. Then you should go to the questions like I have done and read each word in the question very carefully, because the clear cut way of making mistakes is to gloss over the question and assume that you know what you are reading. It might, even if it is saying strengthening and weakening and you confuse the two, or which of the following will not strengthen and you do not read the not, that is one mark of yours which you have just wasted. Similarly, if you have a question, you move on to the options. And what I found helped me most in the CR section was definitely elimination of options, because eliminating options is much easier than finding the one perfect option, because in the CR section, you are likely to never find one perfect option. You are much more likely to find the best option. And I think in this passage for in particular, there were no options where we were very confused whether it would be between two options. We were never had that type of confusion. However, it will definitely come in certain harder passages that we will discuss in this session itself. And so I would recommend the technique of elimination. I just explained eliminating, focusing on certain words in the paragraph, and also eliminating based on whether the option is mentioned in the paragraph or not. So right now we have covered eliminating using the words of the question and eliminating based on whether they are included or not. I hope everyone has followed. We'll start passage 2 now. Again, 4 minutes to read the passage and 2 minutes to solve the questions. There are only 400 words, so you have enough time.
How to crack any competitive exam in 2 months. How to crack any competitive exam in 2 months.
Guys, I'll be answering all the questions that you put into the chat. Just DM me your questions on Zoom and I'll answer them after some time. All right. I hope everyone is done solving the sorry, reading the passage. We're going to scroll down to the questions now. I hope everyone is done solving the questions. It's been 6 minutes. So I'll start with passage 2 and how to solve it. So I think even this passage was not too hard, let's say. Maybe DNA and RNA, some big terms are a little
Sorry, guys, I just got disconnected.
I hope I'm audible again. I hope I'm audible and visible to everyone now. Someone's audio is on. Great. So, guys, am I audible now? There's still an echo. What about now? What about now? Is it fine? Great. Thank you so much. I'll just start the screen sharing again. I wasn't able to hear you before this. I hope it's audible to everyone. And I hope this is visible now finally. So sorry for the delay, guys. I was having some net issues and the echo was quite bad. I'll just start with question 89. So as we have seen, this was a passage about the rDNA, and it was quite easy, I would say. First question. From the passage, which of the following statements best describes the potential impact of rDNA technology? So rDNA technology only has negative effects. So let me just show you. This is not at all mentioned. We talk about the positive effects as well as about the negative effects. So this can be easily ruled out. rDNA technology is purely beneficial. Again, I talked about the negative effects also. So this cannot possibly be one of the correct answers. Option C. Of course, I would hope that you guys read the whole question, horrible diseases. That's one of the negatives that they did talk about, but it doesn't mention the positives. So it cannot be a correct answer. And about the beneficial, offering a multitude of applications in fields such as pharmaceuticals and agriculture. Again, is correct, but doesn't capture the whole picture. Option C, the potential impact of rDNA technology is yet to be fully understood, given its benefits in various industries and potential risks, including ecological disruption and emergency of new diseases. So, of course, this seems to be covering the whole picture finally. And option D,
The implication of rDNA technology are irrelevant as it is only involves laboratory-based manipulation and doesn't interact with the natural world. So now this is the opposite of what is actually mentioned, because it says they do not occur in nature, they cannot be predicted, but there is an opportunity that they can escape the laboratory right here. So they might be able to interact with nature, and irrelevant is a word that is definitely not expressing the author's true thoughts about this topic. So we can say for surety that C will be the correct answer. Now let's go to 90. What is the author's assumption regarding the pharmaceutical predictions made by corporations employing DNA technology? Okay, let's see. This was also mentioned. Let us see where we talk about the pharmaceutical industry. So it will be this paragraph which will be important for this. And guys, you have enough time. Don't be afraid to go back to the passage and check anything at all. You might have a doubt. It's much better to clear the doubt than to lose marks. That is what I started doing. And when you guys take offline mocks, just like you will be giving CLAT offline, be sure to underline. For me, the best thing during my CLAT preparation and giving mocks was to underline the CR passages. For me, that was the best because I could go back to the main points, which I thought were important, and check what was written about them. And I'm sure by now you guys also will understand what are the important points. Just like this, so much is written about the pharmaceutical industry, you would have picked up on it that yes, probably this is also something that I should pay attention to. Let us see what option A says. The author assumes that these predictions are overly optimistic and unfeasible. So now unfeasible and overly optimistic is nowhere mentioned. He does talk about that they have been developed but not marketed. So it indicates that these predictions may be realized. So nowhere is he saying that this is overly optimistic. Otherwise, he would have said it is could have said it is improbable that they could be realized. Then option B, the author assumes that these predictions will be realized due to the products being developed and not marketed yet. So this is exactly what is mentioned in this last line. So possibly the correct answer. Now, option C, the author assumes that these predictions are marketing ploy to garner more support for DNA technology. Now, the author doesn't really talk about that at all. Similarly, he can't also be saying, he doesn't also say whether the pharmaceutical industry is completely pro or for our DNA technology. He mentions what they feel here, but he does not call this like a play for profit or anything. Similarly, so probably not the correct answer again. Now, option D, the author assumes that these predictions are unreliable due to the controversial nature of rDNA technology. Now, this is completely out of the paragraph. This was not mentioned anywhere, even in the top to bottom of the paragraph. He talked about his opponents, but he never said that it is controversial. So the correct option here would be option B. Now, question 91. Based on the passage, how would you describe the tone of the author when discussing the possible risks associated with rDNA technology? Now, the possible risks is just another word for what do the opponents think. It starts from here and ends at here. We already know, we've read it. But what is he thinking? Is he saying, is he being dismissive and unconcerned? Not at all. He seems to be quite concerned about what is going on here. We talk about ethical problems and he also gives us examples. So we cannot say he's unconcerned at all or that he dismisses them. He instead has given them 2 whole paragraphs and nowhere does he say that they are not important. Cautionary and apprehensive. Now, definitely he is cautioning us. We can say that he does seem to be cautioning us and he does seem to be apprehensive about it. Second, and then option C, neutral and indifferent. Now, this plays into the same unconcerned, indifferent. When we dismissive, unconcerned, indifferent, these are all almost synonyms. So neutral and indifferent cannot be a possibility. Enthusiastic and supportive. Now, again, he was never enthusiastic about this. We see he's saying they may disrupt or destroy an entire existing ecosystem. So how could he be said to be enthusiastic? So of course, again, option B is the correct answer. Moving on to the last question. Based on this passage, which of the following could be inferred about the nature of genetically altered organisms created using rDNA technology? Now, when I was giving CLAT, my least favorite questions used to be inference-based questions because I used to always get them wrong. But I'm sure I did work on it. And if you follow the method I'll just be talking about right now, you'll be able to do it. First thing, read the passage correctly, clearly understand what it's saying. Then we try to understand what the question is asking us, and we can easily understand. It's telling us to talk about the nature of genetically altered organisms. And now we'll go to reading the options. Option A, they can easily coexist with naturally occurring organisms without any harmful effects. Now, I know I've read this somewhere where it says that they may escape, and their interactions cannot be predicted with uncertainty, and perhaps they may cause incurable diseases. So this is completely ruled out. It is the opposite of what is said. Now, again, option B, we see they are capable of transforming waste material into useful substances. Now, even though they do mention this in somewhere, they haven't really said that all of them are going to be able to do this. So even though this is partly correct, we are going to read all the options and see whether we stumble across a better option for the answer of this question. Option C, they could potentially disrupt the ecological balance due to their unpredictable interaction with the natural world. Now, this is exactly what is written in the paragraph. Let's see. It is possible that they could cause this, and their interactions could not be predicted with certainty. So this is obviously going to be our completely correct answer. This is much better than any of the others that we have read as of now. And option D, they are naturally occurring organisms which have been modified in laboratories. Now let's see that. They instead say that these organisms do not occur in nature. So following what the author has said, D is completely contradictory to the passage. Again, we come to the correct answer as option C. Now, I've been using these techniques of elimination, focusing on the words. I have been looking at what is given in the passage, and as some of you guys have correctly mentioned in the chat, looking for extreme words. Now, there are some words, as we saw even in this. He says dismissive and unconcerned. He says indifferent, and then he says enthusiastic. Similarly, we look here, he says only negative effects or purely beneficial. These are very extreme words that usually do not indicate in critical reasoning, especially that this option is going to be correct. It usually indicates just the opposite, that this passage is this option of the answers is probably wrong. Because in CR, we usually try to take a more balanced approach. Like look at this, in option A, question 89, option C was the correct one. So it seems to be so moderate. It's no extreme word like only and purely has been used. And similarly are irrelevant. Now, unless the author takes a stand saying that it is completely irrelevant, he is completely unconcerned with it, or he says it is completely unimportant, only then it will be useful. Only then we will look at such extreme words. But in this case, the only moderate option is option C. So I think even that helps you realize that yes, option C is probably the better option. So if you don't have time at all and you are running and you think you need to make a guess, it would be option C. Though now that you have 120 minutes and 120 questions, you will not need to fall back on this method, or that at least that I hope. Let's start with the last passage for today before I'll start taking questions after this. Passage 3. Again, I'll give you guys 4 minutes to read it and 2 minutes to solve the questions. Guys, by now I hope you've read the passages, and now we'll start reading the questions. I hope everyone is done reading the questions and answering them. Great. I see some of you have answered also. Let's move on to the first question here. So question 93. From the standpoint, okay, so let me just talk about the passage first. To me, this was almost a difficult passage. Was definitely not one of the easier ones, and I would have found this to be the most difficult passage that we have done today, especially because it talks about a lot of concepts that we don't know about. Similarly, our DNA passage had talked about a lot of concepts that we don't understand, like what is DNA and rDNA is not something all of us would understand. But then it went on to talk about it in very general terms. However, this passage remains in very specific terms about the topic that is talking about. It doesn't veer off or go into like the philosophy of the topic or whether it is good or bad. It stays mostly in what the topic is about and elaborating on it. So to me, this was a difficult passage to read. But that doesn't have to deter us at all. We know that we have difficult and easy passages, and the difficult passages are the one where we have to score. So easy passages, everyone's going to get 4, 3 point or 3 marks. We know that. What we need to do is try to get 3 out of 4 at least, or similar marks in the difficult passages. And if some of you didn't find this difficult, that would also depend on person to person. Maybe you found another passage difficult, but don't be worried if you get a difficult passage, because they are going to be difficult for everyone, and someone is going to find something difficult. You might be really good at legal and you might find that easy, and someone might be really good at CR and find that easy. Don't compare yourself with your friends specifically. So let us start the questions of the seemingly difficult passage and find out if the questions are also too difficult. From the standpoint of the theory of territoriality, what is the probable effect that the product intended for US was sold unauthorizedly in Canada? Now, this talks about a particular theory that we will see here. So, theory of territoriality. We see that this is similarly mentioned right here in these few lines. And a little bit more is talked about this theory in this last passage. Now, after reading this, what we understand that it says is that it's effective in the country where it is registered. And similarly, this talks about US, which is sold in Canada. So we can understand it was registered in the US and it's currently being sold in Canada. Those are two different things. And they can stop gray marketing practices in the registered countries for the products bearing trademarks. So they can only stop the process, the gray marketing practices in US, because that's where they are registered. Now that we understand what this question is asking and we understand what it's asking about, let's go to the options. Now, option A. The trademark owner in the US would have no legal recourse to halt the gray marketing practices in Canada. Now, this seems to be really a good option because, as we just said, the US, they will only have recourse to stop the practices in their own registered country, which is the US, and not in Canada. So definitely something we could look at. The trademark owner might have the right to stop the gray marketing practices in Canada. Now, this is definitely not true. This would contradict this option, and this would also contradict what is said here. So definitely not. Option C, the trademark owner would lose all right in the to the product once it was sold to distributors. Now, that is actually talking about another theory. This talks about this exhaustion theory. See, they relinquish all rights once the product is sold. And this is what it says, once it's sold to distributors. So now this is definitely not the correct option because it's talking about a different theory altogether. And lastly, gray marketing practices would be allowed to continue since the product's origin remains the same. Again, this is talking about another theory in particular, which is the universality theory. Look here, it indicates the source and origin, and here again we're talking about source and origin. So this talks about exhaustion, this talks about universality. This takes a completely incorrect view of what is the territoriality theory in itself. And so we are left with only option A. Again, elimination is going to be our best friend for CR. Now, how can the author's attitude in the last paragraph towards theory of territoriality be best characterized? Now, again, we come to this small line. What can we say? Is it ambivalent, which means basically not making up your mind, being confused about something, not having a set opinion, and non-committal means the same thing. So we can't say that because we see he says it provides real legal protection, which is desirable, he says here. So obviously real legal protection and inevitable and desirable, he's obviously taking a positive view of it. So we can't say he's being ambivalent. Is he being cautious in questioning? Now, I just said that he's being positive, and we could also see that from our own reading. So definitely not being cautious. Assertive and supportive. Yeah, definitely. He's saying it's inevitable. That shows he's being assertive and supportive because he's saying he's going to be desirable. So this is how specific words in the passage will also matter. Not just the words in your question, but even specific words in your passage will matter to find the correct answer. Currently, this stuff seems to be a really good option. And option D, critical and dismissive. Again, he is definitely not being negative. He is not critiquing it. Instead, he is wholeheartedly supporting it. And he is not dismissing it at all. Instead, he's saying it's inevitable. So definitely option C is the correct option. Now, question 95. Suppose a court ruling upheld the theory of exhaustion in gray marketing case, thereby allowing unauthorized reselling of a product. Which of the following would strengthen the ruling's impact? So let's see. Where is this mentioned? Again, it's mentioned right here in this line. Talking about the exhaustion theory. Let's see, what does this tell us? Evidence showing the theory of territoriality has consistently failed. So theory of territoriality, already it's not talking about the exhaustion theory in curtailing gray marketing practices. So not talking about what's asked in the question, definitely not the right answer. In CR, if an option doesn't really cover what is being asked in the question, definitely not the right answer. And option B, a study demonstrating the role of gray marketing in improving the consumer's access to trademarked products. Now, this seems really like a good option because we see it. This seems like a good option because we see that they wanted to be sold, the products to be sold to distributors, and the study would help to prove that. And talking about option C, proving the manufacturer's suggested retail prices are prohibitively high. Now, actually, when we look at what this is talking about, it's not talking about it's not really talking about the theory of exhaustion. Maybe it is talking about this goodwill function in universality, but definitely not the theory of exhaustion. Last option, testimonials from authorized distributors have witnessed huge surge in sales after gray marketing practices began. Now, this doesn't really strengthen the impact of exhaustion theory at all. As we can see what it says here, they relinquished rights and the products have continued to be sold by distributors. Now, just because there is a surge in sales doesn't really say that this is because the exhaustion theory is being followed and so it should be strengthened. So option B again, though, yeah, definitely there was some confusion between option B and D for me as well. This would have been a tricky question, but going back to the passage will definitely help all of you to realize what the exhaustion theory is saying and how it can be applied here. Okay, last question of this passage. Suppose a corporation is lobbying to make the theory of universality the standard in trademark law. Which arguments would weaken their cause? Again, this is the theory of universality. It talks about certain goodwill functions and they are allowed to continue since the origin remains the same regardless of the distribution route. That's just the gist of the trademark theory. That's what I would have underlined when I got this passage as my mock. I would have taken my pencil and underlined these few points. And I know you guys can also do the same. So it would help you when you go back to the passage. You won't have to look around. You can directly refer to it. Now, what does option A say? Numerous cases demonstrate that gray marketing practices often enhance competition in the market. Now, competition in the market is not something that universality theory even talks about. And we have to weaken it. So this cannot be said to be weakening because it doesn't even though it is concerned, it definitely does not weaken. Now, option B, research data showing that consumers who purchase from gray market have high level of satisfaction from the products they receive. Now, again, satisfaction, it does not address the potential of goodwill of the trademarks, which is also a very important point in theory of universality. And satisfaction, so focusing on this word, we can say that this is an irrelevant option to us. Coming to option C, studies proving that goodwill associated with trademarks has been significantly compromised due to gray marketing practices. Now, as I have been saying, talking about theory of universality, this was very important. The goodwill is very important with trademarks, and so it being compromised is definitely a stand of weakening it. And now, so C looks like a very good option. And last option, option D, evidence that authorized distributors benefit from increased market exposure due to gray marketing. Now, this would also not support the theory of universality because it doesn't really cover the goodwill that we have talked about, which is something that's very important here. And the origin of the product and the distribution route also is not really talked about in this. And distributors benefiting from increased market exposure, that also might be strengthening this. Instead of saying that something, look here, instead of saying that disregarding goodwill function and applying this theory, origin of the product remains the same. So after all of this, we see that what is very important in this question, which is goodwill and being compromised. So definitely option C would be the one which would best fit to weaken their cause, especially if they're supplying the theory of universality. So what I did for these questions, even though definitely this would be the passage that I would have gotten the most number of questions incorrect in, is I would have read the passage. At the same time, I would be underlining what I find important in this passage. Then I would be reading each and every word of what is written in the question, because I think that is where we make most of our mistakes. Reading each and every option and what it is saying, understanding what the question is saying, whether the option is addressing this question at all. And then I would decide through my eliminating strategies, which I think I have shown all of you how I use that. And then I would decide which one is the best option. And remember, in critical reasoning, we don't have to find the perfect option because usually there is no perfect option. We have to find the best fitting option. So I'll stop sharing now because our time is over and you can ask any questions that you have. You can send them on the chat also, and you can put on your mic and ask also. Okay, so I think one of you, Mudit, has said, why not neutral stance, since he has mentioned both positive and negative. Can you tell me which, Mudit, can you tell me which question this is in result to? Which is talking about? Someone had asked what is ambivalent and non-committal. I explained that it is not making up your mind. Yes, I've explained that. How do they compare in difficulty? So when I gave CLAT, definitely there were easier passages on a whole, but you would see that the questions, those were the ones where the problem came. So they're not going to give you easy passages. They're going to give you passages which are slightly tricky to read, maybe slightly longer than the ones that we had, but that's not something to worry about because you have more time to read. And the questions for me were tricky, like the options, there would be 2 or 3 which are quite similar. So the CLAT paper that I gave 2023, definitely passages were easier, questions were tricky, options were trickier. So on a whole, that was a moderate level paper, moderate to easy, but this was definitely easy to hard. Do I recommend reading questions before reading the passage? Yeah. So for me, I would say personally, this is not something that I can endorse to everyone. For me personally, it helped me idea of what I have to find in the passage. Like if you read these questions first and you went in with some idea that it talks about the theory of universality, then you would have similarly some idea that this is what you have to look out for. How to properly solve weakening questions. So yes, weakening questions. So sometimes it's more of common sense and less of what is mentioned in the passage, but that's not usually what happens. What strengthening and weakening questions are something that even I was weak at. So almost, and also it's very important in CR, almost every passage in CR will have one strengthening and weakening question. What I did is first a lot of practice to solve them. And when you're actually giving the paper, read the question properly, ensure that it's asking you to weaken it, read the options, go back to the place in the passage where it is asking you, it is telling you about this, see the position of the author and what the author has himself said, and then see which of the options will either weaken or completely negate what the author says. So that is what I would have done, and that is what I would encourage all of you to do. Okay, the second para, the question that I was talking about before, you had said about rDNA, you were saying both positive and negative. So is that you were asking why can it not be neutral? So it cannot be neutral because is that what you're asking? When we are talking about the second para, you are relating it to which question? Okay, the 91st question. Great, let me just go and see it. Okay, so yeah, why is it not neutral and indifferent? First of all, we are talking about the potential risks. So we are not talking about the passage as a whole. And even when we talk about the passage as a whole, we cannot say he is neutral or indifferent about rDNA. I showed you certain lines in the particular passage. Wait, I can screen share this again if you guys want a further clarification. Here you go. So he says that there is a major concern that they may escape. And then he says that these are genetically altered and they may disturb the world's predator-prey relationship and cause serious problems. And similarly, he says they may disrupt or even destroy the existing ecosystem. So when we are talking like that, can you say that he is being neutral or indifferent? Not at all. He's saying they may seriously it's a serious problem and that they may disrupt and destroy existing ecosystems. So when we are talking about the risks, see here, if he had said about the positives, but we are not supposed to focus on the positives in this question. We're supposed to focus on the risks. We are not limiting ourselves to the risks, but looking at the paragraph and looking at the questions, we have to negate that he is being neutral or indifferent. I hope that solved your question. Yes, Abhay has raised his hand. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself.
I want to ask a couple of questions. मतलब छोटे-छोटे हैं वो. आपने vocabs के लिए क्या किया था मतलब?
I actually cannot hear you too well. I'm so sorry about that. Could you just type in your questions? I'll answer them for sure.
Didi, I have typed them in chat box.
Okay, great. Yes, I just found them. Great. So, you asked about vocab and editorial vocab for the past 6 months, high frequency words, grammars. Okay. So your question is mostly concerned with vocabulary and grammar. And yes, that's definitely an important topic for CLAT. I'll tell you what I personally had done. If you had joined any coaching, they so there. So instead, what I did is there's a particular site called vocabulary.com. If you're concerned about your vocabulary skills, and even if you're not, like even I used it, I was not too concerned about my vocabulary, but definitely there are some words in which I used in the CLAT passages that no one, definitely most people would not have known. So you go to vocabulary.com, they have lists where you can practice your vocabulary, almost like flip cards and quizzes. So that is definitely very helpful. They tell you how to use it in a context, they tell you how to spell it, and they tell you what the meaning is. And it's with MCQ, so almost exactly CLAT format. Understanding the meaning of a word in its given context, understanding the spelling of a word, and understanding what a word means. That's exactly what you need for CLAT. And so that was definitely very helpful. I hope that solves your question. Something about grammar for CLAT. Okay, CLAT or ALET and where to focus. So I think I've solved the question. Grammar, you can use Wren & Martin. If you're very concerned about your grammar, definitely Wren & Martin is the way to go. It will definitely help you understand grammar. It's like the Bible for grammar, basically. So definitely go to Wren & Martin if you're very concerned. I also had one Wren & Martin about that. Is it really needed, grammar? Well, if you are concerned, I would say definitely go for it. Do not go into the CLAT paper feeling concerned about your abilities or whether you will do well or will not do well. Referring back to the passage again and again for questions consumes a lot of time. Yes, that is dependent on you. This was my strategy in which, since even when I had 150 questions in 120 minutes, I would find myself going back to the question, going back to the paper just to check. And it does not take that much time because when you develop your reading skills, and especially when you will continuously do so many mocks, and when you will have your offline papers, you'll find yourself going back to the passage. And that's not something you should avoid at all costs, unless you find that it is going to drag you down, it's going to consume too much time for you. So these are some personal decisions. Of course, you can have your own method. This was just mine. I preferred going back to the passage. So you can choose what you want to do then. You are not concerned about grammar. That's fine. Grammar is not something that is that was very important in CLAT. It is important for your comprehension. So if you're concerned like that, definitely. Is it necessary to understand grammar deeply? Well, not really. It's mostly for comprehension, but yes, vocabulary is necessary. And sometimes in English, they will have grammatical questions. I have seen seniors quite a few seniors whose papers did have questions arising from grammar. And that is an anomaly, but it does happen. So I will not tell you to not do it at all or to do it. That's your own personal discretion. Note taking while reading a CR passage. So my form of note taking was underlining. So definitely I did take notes in that method, but I didn't write a gist or anything because you do not have time to write extra during CLAT exam. Definitely not. Yes, I have given ALIT. I'll just see. What would be a good score considering the changing CLAT format? I can definitely not tell you. I have no idea how your peers are going to perform. We had some basic idea of 150, that 100 would be a good score. But now with the extra time, you have to understand that when kids have more time, they can read more. So you have increased competition, but you have increased time. So now with the reduced time, you have to increase your accuracy. Try to answer as much as possible. Try to use the methods of elimination that I have said. So they will definitely help you increase your accuracy. And if you're still worried, just practice. That was what helped me go from 8 marks to 28 marks. That 20 marks was increased just due to practice. Every day I used to sit with one mock and solve all the CR passages. And then I used to see whether my answers were correct or not. And even if they were correct, I used to read the explanation, so I would understand whether it was actually my reasoning was correct or not. Sometimes you can stumble upon the correct answer even with the wrong reasoning, and you don't want to take that chance in the actual paper. So practice, practice, practice. CR will not seem difficult for you after that. Great. I think there are a few more questions. For analytical topics, what have I think all CR topics are in a way analytical. Like we did when they're talking about the positives and negatives, that is in a way an analytical topic in itself. So you can solve those.
The analytical means syllogism, blood relation, ये सब आपने किया?
Oh, you mean, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I have done those. Those are more important for ALET 100%. But yes, those analytical reasoning is quite different from what we are doing here. You will have to practice them separately. But you never know what the ALET paper is going to throw at you. It may throw something completely different at you, and then you will be dumbfounded, because the ALET paper for me had a lot of critical reasoning questions. They might completely change it for you. Very few analytical questions for me, mostly critical reasoning questions. So never know with ALET. Practicing them is the way to go. But yeah, ALET is going to be a side exam. Please don't focus all your attention on ALET, guys. Okay, a few more questions.
Didi, what were your GK score?
GK score, I think it was around 27, because our GK was very tough. Our GK paper was supposedly very tough.
ये
And
27 तो
what kept
27 बहुत
We
27
had
तो बहुत ज्यादा, सबके 18-19 आए थे.
Yeah, I did get 27. GK is practice. Everything in CLAT is just practice, guys. The more time you give to it, the better you're going to get at it. So GK for the whole last month, I had filled. I can show you the size of the notebook. 2 of these thick notebooks I had filled with GK notes. You can do it. If you practice, you can do it.
And
What
Didi,
kept me motivated in my prep?
please tell your sectional score of actual CLAT paper.
Sectional score, I don't remember that much now. I remember my full score was close to 107. So because our paper was a tough paper, that means the marks had really fallen for the whole thing. So we don't know. If you guys get a tough paper, it might be low marks. If you guys get a very difficult paper, then very difficult or tough or very easy, then it can even cross 100. We don't know about your pattern. But the thing is, you guys don't need to be that worried. Like, for the similar thing had happened to my peers, that when we were in July thinking that we have a whole year left in July 2022, and then suddenly they said it's going to be in December. So you can understand 6 months of our preparation had gone. But if you have been preparing consistently, if you have been preparing consistently, if you're interested, if you're giving your time to this, if you're dedicated, there's not much that can deter you. You can definitely do it if you're determined and if you keep working, and nothing really has changed other than the number of questions. The method of preparation, the time that you have, everything remains the same. So don't be that worried, guys. If you have been preparing, then you're just keep doing what you've been doing, you're good to go.
दीदी फॉर vocabs as you have said कि आपने इंटरव्यू में बताया था कि वर्ड पावर भी कर सकते हैं, पर एग्जाम में ज्यादा vocabs के क्वेश्चन आते नहीं, मतलब अगर जनरल सी vocab है, एडिटोरियल्स पढ़ रहे हैं लगातार, हाई फ्रिक्वेंसी वर्ड्स कर लिए तो मतलब इजी लगने लगती है फिर, और एक दो वर्ड्स आते हैं उसके लिए वर्ड पावर कहाँ प्रिफर करें, इतने महीने बच्चे हैं, इतने महीने भी कहाँ बच्चे हैं.
Okay, that's understandable. Definitely. Yeah, if you're able to understand what's written in the passages, if you're able, maybe go back to the passages. If you don't understand a word, circle it in your mocks, go home and then check what is written, what it actually means. Maybe keep a compendium of the words that you find difficult. If you're reading editorials and you're able to understand every single word, that's great. Do we need to go in depth of the syllabus or practice more and more questions? So the CLAT doesn't really have a syllabus. And if you're referring to ALET, that has zero syllabus at all. CLAT does have some basic guidelines, but if we practice more and more questions, practice is the best. Like I told you, from November onwards, I sat with a mock every day and used to solve the CR questions. And I told you the method that I used also. So yeah, practice. The only thing that you can do to increase your marks is practice, and also definitely take tips and strategies from your seniors and your mentors and from your teachers. That will definitely help. What kept me motivated in my prep? I wanted to crack CLAT. You just have to want it. I'm sure all of you do. That's why you're still in this session. That is good enough. You need to have to want to crack it, and motivating us to prep to clear CLAT. Okay, let me just see. I can end my session on that, but in case there's any other question, I just finished them. Yes, Amrendra.
Am I audible?
Yes.
So I just want to ask that the way you have said a lot many things, I just assume that we have to just keep things everything simple, and rather should focus more on reading more, analyzing what we have read in terms of what is being asked in the critical reasoning, and practice more and more rather than delving into the theories or the concept, or just sharpening our vocabulary skills, because as we all know that it is based on our ability to how we can extract meaning from the context itself.
What do you mean by keep everything simple?
Keep everything simple is that, see, critical reasoning, we know there are certain varieties of questions that can be asked, be it the weakening or the strengthening, or even like inference questions or evaluating the argument. See, there are varieties of questions, but rather than, I mean, clearing theories or the concept of every particular aspect and delving into the depth of those, we should rather focus on what we have been asked from the beginning from our respective mentors, like to read more, analyze what we have just read in terms of the question that can be asked in this section, and practice more and more questions so that it can, and whatever the doubts are, we can just clear from our mentor, so that we can gain that theoretical idea from our mentor rather than referring to any particular sort of guide.
Okay. So the thing is, if you're going to look at the concepts or the particular, you're saying, I want to understand the concept behind strengthening and weakening this, or inference based questions or extrapolation based questions. These things are not really conceptual. Analytical reasoning, that's where the concepts come in. But yeah, definitely in critical reasoning, there are some things that are conceptual, but you have to focus on them as well. It's not that you only focus on practice. If once you have your foundation, that is, once you have your basics, you know the theories, I'm not telling you to go very deep into them. You just need to know what they are asking you and what it means. Inference and deduction, you need to know what they're asking you. That is the theory in critical reasoning, and after that is just practice. So yes, listen to your mentors, they're completely right. Reading more, analyzing more, looking at your mistakes, attempting more papers, it's always the best thing. It's the best way to move forward. That is what I would recommend to you as well. But that is when you have your foundation in place. And already I'm assuming a lot of you guys have that foundation. And if you don't, you will see it reflecting in your marks. If you don't understand what an inference question is or what a premise question is, how will you be able to solve them? You will not be able to solve them at all. So that is what I hope all of you understand. It's not that it's not important. It's that it's your basis. I'm telling you after the basis. I hope we've
Yeah, that,
understood that.
yeah, exactly. That is why I was taking.
Sorry, you weren't audible. Okay, I hope I've solved your doubt then. Also, okay, end the session motivating us for our prep to clear CLAT. Guys, just keep working. It seems difficult right now, but if you get through, it's gonna be worth it. All right. If you work, if this is your dream, you should work towards it, and you should definitely do your best to achieve it. And just keep working. It'll definitely pay off. Even if you don't get NLS, you get some good NLU, that is also really good enough. Work towards ALET, work towards CLAT, give your time to it. Take breaks, that's also really important, but definitely as much time as possible that you can give to CLAT. And just keep preparing, just keep going. It's going to be done on 3rd December. It'll all be done. And if you come here, I cannot wait to see all of you in NLS. I hope you really enjoyed this session, guys. And okay, so I don't think anyone's saying anything. I hope you really enjoyed this session, and I hope I've cleared your doubts. And just keep practicing. Thank you for attending this session. I hope it was helpful. I'll just end it now. Goodbye.